light medium roasted Ethiopia, and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain, exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
The University of Guam Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific. Join us on February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 to 9 p.m. and enjoy a night of live entertainment and cultural delicacies, all while exploring the many ways we celebrate love in the region. Tickets are $60 per person and include free-flowing drinks. Proceeds will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts programs. Visit give.uog.edu and click Shop to get your tickets today. Sponsored by the Guam Daily Post, Matson Navigation, and Choice Broadcasting.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Were you taking notes on that one, Real Joe Cruz?
I know it by heart, sir. And when you slow it down like that, it hits even harder.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. It's an important thing to have right on the tip of your tongue. And it's an important thing to have right on the tip of your program. That's why we always start Tall Tales with a respectful reading of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, providing the people with a right to keep and bear arms. And we move from there into many other parts of the Constitution as a general principle. We, meaning the real Joe Cruz and I, being constitutionalists, classical liberals, as Thomas Jefferson would have understood that term. So after the Second Amendment, we plunge right into the part of the program called Zemi Ikotni. And this is that part of the program where I wail unmercifully on the Daily News for not running local editorials. It's been so long since they ran a local editorial. And then shift over to the Post, who quite often runs good local editorials. After I examine the editorials, parse them, check them for accuracy, factual accuracy, theoretical astuteness, and so on, I will award the coveted blue star to the better of the two. Usually the competition is only between the Post and no award at all. I don't hand out the award by default, so the Post has to meet a certain standard, even though it has no competition, in order to get the award. Well, today is kind of like every other day. I look at the Daily News, and they have an editorial. They put something on what they refer to as their editorial. It's their newspaper. I guess they could call it what they want to. We have something from Stephen N. Xenakis, a psychiatrist and retired brigadier general who serves on the executive boards of the Center for Ethics and Rule of Law at the University of Pennsylvania. Well, at least he's not from the USA Today editorial board. And he has a good editorial here. It's about how the military fails its fighters on brain injuries. And it's worth reading. And I suppose it has some relevance to Guam because we do send our soldiers and airmen into harm's way, some of whom more than likely have had traumatic brain injuries. And as we continue on, may be exposed to that in the future. But it's not a local editorial. Okay, then I turn to the Post, and the Post, Spa Day. Spending shows lack of sensibility to the role of public servant. Boy, we just see it all the time. In the context of the University of Guam's multi-million-dollar annual budget, $450 is tiny. And one of the caveats here for you folks over there at the Post, don't precede any number with the word only. I hear people down in the legislature when they're talking budget, well, it's only $50,000. In fact, we had that very conversation way back in the 27th Guam legislature when we were deciding whether or not the government of Guam should pay for fireworks for New Year's Eve. And the Democrats' argument was, well, it's only $50,000. To me, $50,000 is a lot of money. I suppose, Real Joe Cruz, you've probably got $50,000 in your pocket right now, don't you?
I don't, sir, but that kind of statement is the kind of thing a kid would say.
Only
a child. Yeah.
Only
like
$50,000.
If your child asked you for $50 and you said $50 and they said, yeah, it's only $50.
Yeah, Daddy, can you buy this new toy for me?
That's what
I
children
don't know.
say.
It looks like it's only $20. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not persuaded by this $450 is tiny. I think a lot of folks on this island would be very happy if somehow $450 could drop into their laps. Going on with the editorial, when someone at UOG uses a government-issued credit card to pay that amount for massages for a select group of workers at the local university, that's a problem. I'll go you one better. If it's $4.50, it's still a problem. Even with the widely publicized history of government credit card spending by agencies such as the AB Wanpat International Airport Authority and the Guam Economic Development Authority many gubernatorial administrations ago, this issue still comes up. This means not everyone in power in the local government to make decisions on how to use government money has the common sense to avoid improper spending such as this. This means not everyone in power, to be clear, it was the UOG Finance Office that flagged the, quote, spa day spending at Beng Tang Spa during a review of credit card expenses. In July 2019, a purchase was made at Beng Tang Spa at the Lodi Hotel as part of a staff development day for 9 staff members in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, UOG has acknowledged. A staff development day. A charge of $450 was made to the official credit card of James Selman, Dean of the college. The purchase was funded by non-appropriated funds at UOG, meaning it's money UOG raised independently and is not taxpayer money authorized by the legislature through an appropriation. Local funds were not used, UOG pointed out, but this is still public money in the care of UOG. The spa spending also supposedly went through the proper procurement process. Some planning went into it. Someone had to decide it was okay to use the money in this way. Someone had to get price quotes from spas. Someone had to choose which spa to visit. And then the group actually had to go, get the treatment, and spend the money. At no step along the way, though, did anyone think to raise a red flag. No one reconsidered, let alone stopped it. For UOG administration, the spa spending is a part of a, quote, wellness activity. But because it's very special treatment of just a few chosen people, it's hardly easy for the public to accept. It shows there's still a disconnect between what the public expects of government workers who are servants of the people, and what those servants, those employees of the people, actually do and feel they're entitled to. Will UOG discipline anyone involved? We'll wait and see. Now, you heard me before talk about government employees who use their position to scratch their own itch. And as a general principle, I don't think it's a good procedure. I don't think that government employees should use their office to scratch their own itch. So as an example, if you lived on Yakety Yak Road in Jigu, and you are, let's say, a senator, and you call the director of public works and say, when are you guys going to pave Yakety Yak Road? Well, I don't know. We don't have the budget. Well, you ought to find the budget. I live on Yak. That's scratching your own itch using public office. Well, this apparently went farther than using your public office to scratch your own itch. This was using your office to massage your own itch. So the optics here, UOG, are just not good. You know, a lot of folks out there, a lot of your students, no matter how much it costs, probably are not going to go to Bang Tang Spa. Let's see, what was it that they did at Bang Tang Spa?
Massagey.
Well, whatever they did at Bang Tang Spa, I expect 99% of your students at the university, even if they had a windfall of little extra money, are not going to go to Bang Tang Spa at a fancy hotel. It just, the optics are not good at all. There may be something of an explanation here, but it just doesn't look good. But once again, I've got to compliment the Post for ferreting this out, developing the editorial, and coming up with a call to action. So once again, the Blue Star goes to those intrepid journalists over there at the Post. Okay, so from there we go to the card. And this is what I have on the card today. One more time, I'm going to do Nancy versus Don. Yeah, I'm not going to tear up the card.
That's never going to end, sir.
It's never Nancy versus Don.
Yeah.
Never going to end. Well, and this time it's not just Nancy versus Don. It's Jonathan Turley versus Nancy. Jonathan Turley is one of the guys that I hold in pretty high esteem. I've mentioned Jonathan Turley before. He's a lawyer, a very famous lawyer. He's handled some really important cases. Professor at George Washington University, and holds the distinction of actually coming out here and addressing the district court conference about 3 years ago. He's a really interesting guy, pretty decent fellow, very smart, writes a column every day at least one column every day. And he claims he's a Democrat. He says he voted for Hillary, but he has had very little patience with the Democrats and the way they bungled through this impeachment. And he really lowers the boom on Nancy. So that's the first item on the card. Next, I've got Ken Leon Guerrero, a gentleman that Ray refers to as the other Governor Leon Guerrero, versus the King of Spain. And this is kind of a continuation of Taitano versus Ken LG versus Guam versus Afrikaners at the UNPIO, Unpo, that new branded dog food, Unpo. And it's the reason that they're all grouped together, they all come from kind of the same place. It's one more way for the separatists to get out and do some propagandizing about how much better off Guam would be if it were separated from the United States and an independent sovereign nation. Okay, then I've got the mayors versus Aetna, and we're back to scratching itches again. And then I've got Tall Tales versus the Mayor's Council. If you want to be on the opposite side of the card from Tall Tales, make sure that the newspaper covers a salary increase that just doesn't read right. I give you the raises that the CCU gave to its managers in November year before last. It just didn't look right. The word executive session was in there. When something like that comes up, my suspicion gland works overtime, and I start digging into it. So we've got the mayors versus Aetna, as it were, Tall Tales versus the Mayor's Council. And then I've got some holdovers from way back that I may get to today. I've got Chief Ignacio versus Public Safety, Tall Tales versus the Hell No group, Robert Underwood versus us, the Pope versus Trump, even the Pope versus Trump, and Antonio Gramsci versus y'all. So let's start out here with Jonathan Turley versus Nancy, which is a continuation of Nancy versus Don. This is Jonathan Turley versus Nancy. And the headline of Turley's column is this: Nancy Pelosi should resign. Anybody out there disagree with that statement? Nancy Pelosi should we can't impeach senators. You cannot impeach a senator or a member of Congress, a member of the House. You can impeach a judge, you can impeach a president, a vice president, or a cabinet official, but you cannot impeach a member of the House of Representatives. You cannot impeach a speaker. So I'm a great champion of the United States Constitution, but there's one flaw. There should be some way to get rid of a speaker. Okay, so here it goes. The House has its share of infamies, great and small, real and symbolic, and has been the scene of personal infamies from brawls to canings. But the conduct of Speaker Nancy Pelosi at the State of the Union address this week will go down as a day of infamy for the chamber as an institution. It has long been a tradition for House speakers to remain stoic and neutral in listening to the address. However, Pelosi seemed to be intent on mocking President Trump from behind his back with sophomoric facial grimaces and head shaking, culminating in her ripping up a copy of his address. Oh, you remember, was it yesterday or the day? I think it was yesterday when I went through the ways that Nancy really should be treated. She should stand in the corner for 15 minutes, stay after school for half an hour. Pam Duvall said she should be made to copy the entire speech that Trump wrote. Somebody else said she should write 100 times, "I will respect the president." These are the kinds of things that we had to deal with back in grade school, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I remember one time, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, and Mr. Brune had left the room. He had to go somewhere. And when Mr. Brune came back, we were not working on the assignment that he had given us.
Uh-oh.
We were talking and laughing and skylarking and acting like a room full of 7th graders. Mr. Brune did not think this was appropriate at all. So he assigned us the task of writing a 1,000-word theme.
Wow.
Yeah. Why I should not talk in class. Well, I did it. You know. Well, to make a short story long, Mr. Brood, obviously I never forgot it, and I don't think I got busted for talking in class again. So maybe we should Brunize Nancy Pelosi. But Pelosi seemed to be intent on mocking President Trump from behind his back with sophomoric facial grimaces and head shaking, culminating in her ripping up a copy of his address. Her drop the mic moment, while having a lasting impact on the House, will have a lasting impact on the House. While many will celebrate her trolling of the president, she tore up something far more important than a speech. Pelosi has shredded decades of tradition, decorum, and civility that the nation could use now more than ever. The House Speaker is more than a political partisan, particularly when carrying out functions as a State of the Union address. A president appears in the House as a guest of both chambers of Congress. The House Speaker represents not her party or herself, but the entirety of the chamber, meaning the House and the Senate. At that moment, she must transcend her own political ambitions and loyalties. Tensions for this address were high. The House impeachment managers sat as a group in front of the president as a reminder of the ongoing trial. That can be excused as a silent but pointed message from the Democrats. Trump hardly covered himself with glory by not shaking hands with Pelosi. I also strongly disliked elements of his address which bordered on, quote, check under your seat moments, and the awarding of conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh with the Presidential Medal of Freedom inside the House gallery, like a Mardi Gras bead toss. A real Joe Cruz, I don't think you've ever been to the Mardi Gras.
I haven't, but I've seen how they throw the beads.
The floats come
Yeah.
along. Hey, mister, throw me something.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. All right. However, if Trump made the State of the Union look like Oprah, then Pelosi made it look like Jerry Springer. What followed was an utter disgrace. First, Pelosi dropped the traditional greeting before the start of the address. Quote, members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States. Instead, she simply announced, members of the Congress, the President of the United States. Sort of like, oh, by the way, the President's here. You can be seated. It was extremely petty and profoundly inappropriate. Putting aside the fact that this is not her tradition, but that of the House, it is no excuse to note that the president was impeached. Such an indignity was not imposed on President Clinton during his own impeachment proceeding, and anyone respecting due process would note that Trump has been accused, not convicted, at this point in the constitutional process. Pelosi proceeded to repeatedly shake her head, mouth words to others, and visibly disagree with the address. Isn't that the reason that they have the speaker sitting behind the president during the State of the Union address, so she can kind of give him this one or like that or something like that to distract attention from the president? Why else would they put her there? But of course, I didn't see Vice President Pence engaging in any of these things. I didn't see him, raising the fist or attaboy or something like that. Okay, we're coming up on the first break here. We'll come back to Nancy versus Don in just a second.
People come to Chili's for a million reasons. For happy hour, date night, birthdays, or just because it's Tuesday. But if you ask us what brings people into our restaurants time and time again is that Chili's moment. You know the one. When you eat so much you want to fall asleep at the table, or when you meet up with good friends and it turns into a party. At Chili's, moments like these matter, and we want to make more of them. So there may be a million reasons to Chili's, but all you really need is one. Chili's. Savor the moment in our new location in the Tumon Sands Plaza, second floor.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
I've got a simple math test waiting for you, and I know that you, unlike so many others, are going to get an A. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, that math quiz may well determine how much you enjoy your job.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The UOG Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific, Thursday, February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. $60 per person includes cultural delicacies, free-flowing drinks, and live entertainment. Love Languages in the Pacific will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts programs.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Short break here, and let's see, I've got Senator Chris Duenas on the line. Okay, good way to start an episode of Tall Tales with Senator Chris Duenas. Good afternoon, Chris.
Up a day, Senator, Judge, and overall great guy, Bob. How are you?
Fine, sir.
So I have, I'm going to do the 3 P's today, starting with petulance, prestige, and priority.
Okay.
On petulance, I have a hard time calling her speaker, but Speaker Nancy Pelosi's performance was distasteful and just not representative of the hall of Congress as was described by Mr. Turley. But, you know, I have an observation that was made by a few, I don't know, I listened to some of the Fox coverage of it, and I don't know the particular commentators, but I agreed with it. And I honestly think her anger was more geared towards the squad and her crew. As I was watching, it looked to me she was constantly glaring at the Democratic side of the House. And I think she's just so enraged by having to be drugged through that. Of course, it's her decision, but having to be drugged through that impeachment proceeding and got suckered into it, which actually I think by all accounts now is a complete failure.
Yeah, it's a good observation, Chris. Very good observation. You may be right.
I mean, obviously, there's no question her disdain for the president, but I think her thing was, this guy is spiking the ball in the end zone, doing the celebration dance. I mean, insert whatever you want to call it here. And it's all because we gave this to him.
True enough.
On prestige, I think not enough is being mentioned about Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. I think he has been brilliant. I think he has been strategic. And I think he has been graceful. And he represents, in my opinion, what truly should be emulated and should be congratulated and lauded in terms of a fine lawmaker and a fine senator.
Good call, Chris.
I really think that, he's calm in the face of a storm. He picks his words so well. And even in victory today, I don't know if I would use magnanimous, but just using his terms of it was, in his comments, it was purely a political process, and it was a complete failure in terms of that attempt. And I was, he as the leader had to really work so hard on ensuring that he could communicate with his members, and he communicated today, and I'm sure it's based on factual information, that those that Chuck Schumer is probably targeting, those 4 or 5 senators that could be vulnerable, actually, as he articulates, at least for now, without any, whatever happens going forward, but are stronger than they were prior to impeachment. And I know that he had a lot to do with talking to them and letting them know that hold strong, you may have your misgivings, you may be in districts where it's kind of difficult because of the makeup of the electorate. But I think that he has done a great job and masterfully brought them through, and will avoid Chuck Schumer's true intention, which was to flip the Senate.
I agree, Chris. Very good observations.
So my third one is perception, or priorities, I guess. I could use the two. You and I have talked about this quite a bit, Bob, and when you say only on amounts of money, it's not necessarily just the enumeration. Like you said, somebody with a power bill right now that they can't pay $100 is huge. Somebody going to the hospital, leaving, trying to sign off on an agreement to take care of their family that they barely had enough to pay for gas to get there, and they're going to, be dealing with that situation. The idea that it's non-appropriated funds and it was fundraising, if you ask somebody straight out, hey, we're going to raise these funds as part of our university's foundation, and what we're going to do with it is we're going to have a staff development day, and we're all going to go get massages. I don't know how many tickets you would sell to that fundraiser. But the idea is even when, as you use the example of in the legislature, when it's only $50,000, the idea, and I know you and I have talked about this, and this is why when we get the angry callers and people that call in to really just kind of lose it on when they hear only, or when they hear about non-prioritization and non-funding of priorities, is it really is the core responsibility. And that's when people get so upset, when the priorities of education, the priorities of public safety, the priorities of everyday life are not funded, and they look at anything else as excess. And you simply lose the ground. Like with the kids that are going there, and some kids go to college and are working 1 or 2 jobs and actually pay for their college. And when they hear about an increase or they hear about anything else, their first thing is, but wait, how is the money being spent? What appropriations are we getting to subsidize this university? And how can I have an affordable education? And so priorities really, when the folks on the street, when the everyday folks see this situation, it's just so hard to ever represent that it's only this amount of money. I was trying to be pithy, but I don't think I succeeded.
Well, you're right on point, Chris.
Always enjoy being on your show, Bob.
And I always enjoy your calling in. Those were very sharp observations, Chris. Thank you very much for sharing.
Sure. I know you got a great card. I look forward to listening to the balance of the show, Bob.
Okay. So, former Senator Chris Duenas, talking about Mitch McConnell and Nancy. I don't know if I'll go back into what my friend Turley said. He's exactly right on point. And there's a word that comes up in a situation like this, and the word is gentleman. And I have a definition for the word gentleman. It's not Webster's or something like that. It's my own definition. And I think Mitch McConnell may very well be a gentleman. I don't think Nancy Pelosi is. Now, I know gentleman, gentlewoman, they, and all, and that whole rigmarole. So when I talk about a gentleman, I'm talking about a person of any one of the numerous sexes that now populate the earth. How many are there? 40 or 50 different sexes? Yeah. So to me, this is a good working definition of a gentleman. A gentleman never gives offense, even when offended. And that's kind of how I see Mitch McConnell. Of course, you know, it ain't fair because Mitch is a Southern fella. He's from Tennessee. And just the way that Southern fellas have a way of expressing themselves, doesn't come across as quite as strident as them doggone Yankees. But I think Mitch McConnell is a gentleman. You may not like his politics, but that's my 2 cents worth. Obviously, Nancy, you are not a gentleman, a gentlewoman, or a gentle person. You showed yourself to be very petty. And I was peeking at Facebook here. I'm going to get to you in just a second, Pete. You know why I had to say that twice, right?
Yes, sir. I heard it.
I saw somebody on Facebook, on our Facebook here, saying, in regards to my statement that you cannot impeach a member of Congress, somebody said, yes, but you can censure them, et cetera, and which is true. And the members of the House can expel a member of the House for good reason, bad reason, or no reason at all. But here comes my lack of gentlemanliness here. If it were Nancy, maybe just a resolution of censure would be appropriate, because if that were the case, she'd really lose face. And at her age, that's probably something she could afford to lose. Thank you, Real Joe Cruz.
Slow.
Thank you, Real Joe Cruz.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, Pete.
Hey, how's it going, Uncle Bob?
Pretty good, Pete.
You know, I'm really upset. I went to McDonald's and I asked for a dipped cone, and they said they only serve that during summertime. I said, we only have summertime on Guam.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, I was listening to Mr. Duenas. Good points, but I would also just offer counterpoints that back when it was the other side, the other president getting impeached, their positions were reversed. I'm talking about Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. And so whether the strategy was brilliant or whether, masterful or whatever, it was the complete opposite. They held the complete opposite positions when it was the Democrat that was getting impeached. So
let me interrupt you here for a second, Pete. You know, that happens a lot with what I call men of affairs. You know, there could be a situation where a guy could be a prosecutor and prosecute criminals and throw the book at them, and then go from there to the public defender and defend criminals. Same guy, same principles.
Yeah, understood.
Things like that
but,
happen.
But it just
it's ironic.
Seems like they copied. Yeah, they copied the playbook of the other side, but that's because the tables have turned. So of course you're going to copy the playbook, right? So, but anyways, I wanted to mention Mitt Romney and his statement afterwards. Whether he's correct or incorrect, he was brave to be the lone guy that stood up against his party, making it seem like, you know, it's not just a big good old boys club. He stood up against the party and said what he had to say, and because he believes that that's what his conscience required.
Well, you know, there's something to be said. If you get on my political spectrum here. I don't know if you remember my description of the political spectrum, Pete.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you look through a political spectrum and it filters out everything else, morals, ethics, the law, etc. It only allows political considerations to come through. And oftentimes being the only guy, being the one guy on a 14-1 vote is the best possible position that a person could be in. Because people will pay more attention to you. You have a better ability to explain your position as to where you were, and your vote doesn't make any difference to the outcome anyhow, so no one can blame you when things head south. So for Mitt Romney, I would say that, and I'm just speculating here, I would say that what he did was a calculated political gambit, just like in chess, where you maybe lose a piece to gain some position on the board. I think
he is a very savvy individual.
Yeah. So, I see him losing in the short term because the Republicans will all throw mud at him. But gaining a position on the board for maybe his next run for president, I don't know.
Yep. All right. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there. I love hearing what Chris always says, and I just wanted to offer a counterpoint.
Well, I'm glad you did. Thanks for calling, Pete.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for calling, Pete. Thanks for calling, Pete. I thought I had another caller.
Yeah, we had Mark on the line. He dropped. I don't know if either he hung up or...
Well, that's the second time that...
he was going to make his mark, but...
He was going to make his mark, but
he should call back.
He should call back. Mark, call back. Make your mark. Yeah, so I saw some other interesting things here on Facebook. I think I'll just take a look here on Facebook and see what I got. Where am I here? Yeah, here we go. Ishmael Velez. Ishmael, I saw your first one, and I'll get to that too, but right now this one is very topical. Ishmael Velez, Republican or Democrat, what does it matter? Neither can make wine from water. They are both politicians, always the same, only concerned with winning the game. One makes a comment, the other opposes, but neither of them smell like roses. Both making promises they know they can't keep, herding voters like shepherds do sheep. But making a choice is part of the deal. Which of the liars catches your appeal? Some promise change, others more of the same. So vote for the ones with nothing to gain. Do me a favor this election season. Vote for the ones who can't. Vote for the liar. Which of the liars catches your appeal? Some promises change, others more of the same. So vote for the... Okay, I read that already. The ones who aren't connected, the ones who aren't in, the ones who admit they do commit sin. Because we are all human, none of us is perfect, and if they disagree, they're criminal or suspect. Yes, very good. Very good. I'm going to go back and read the first one too, Ishmael. Like yesterday, I didn't get around to it. This one has a little more local flavor. I champion the great liberator, not to be confused with a refrigerator, defender of her truth, opposer of colonizer freedom, because those American rights, you don't need them. The great unifier, bringing her people together with intentions as genuine as leather, bringing to the island the pleasures of Unpo, which are as enjoyable as stubbing your big toe. The speaker, the great intellectual whose efforts are ineffectual, preaching an agent of unity while promoting the inequality of the community. So do as I say, not as I do, because as the speaker, I know that I'm better than you. Yeah. Okay, let's see what else I got here. I know there's some pretty interesting stuff on here. Chris Abalencia, doesn't make this rhyme. He just says she's nuts. Steve Hagan, Nancy bit off more than she can do and left her teeth in it. Jesse Limtiaco, McConnell also said D.C. and Puerto Rico will never become a state. Okay, let's take a break and we'll come back to the Facebook comments.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So, okay, here we are back again looking at Jesse Limtiaco's comment. Jesse Limtiaco, McConnell also said D.C. and Puerto Rico will never become states as long as he is Senate Majority Leader. He thinks it's part of the socialist agenda to make more territories a state. Well, let me just address this from several different contexts. First of all, if that's what Mitch McConnell said about D.C., I'm with him 100%. D.C. should never, ever become a state. It was a gigantic mistake to amend the Constitution in 1961 to allow residents of D.C. to vote for president. It's a great deal for the Democrats, of course, because, you know, there are Republicans in the District of Columbia, and the last time I was there, I met them both. Yeah, so I can see that on a partisan basis, if no other, but if you look at the structure of the Constitution and the government that it created, it answers a lot of the questions. You might not like the answers to the questions, but it makes it clear why, if you don't live in a state, you cannot vote for president. Why you don't have a representative in the House or a representative in the Senate. Because you don't live in a state. The Union was the Union of States. And I've mentioned this before. The founders never thought that the United States would become a colonialist country, an imperial country. If they had, they might have put something in the Constitution that would have allowed the United States to deal with its colonies in a little bit more efficient fashion. But we never thought that the U.S. would be an imperialist country. We didn't get into that really. Civil War is probably the watershed when we kind of decided that we wanted a strong national government and pay no attention to those things over there called states, etc. But certainly by 1898, and if you read the history of the Spanish-American War in the next 3 or 4 years, this was an extremely hotly contested debate dealing with imperialism. And the country was almost evenly divided. The Democrats, William Jennings Bryan, about whom Mark Twain had one of the better little comments I ever heard. William Jennings Bryan was from Nebraska, and he matured very early in his political life. He was very successful in his 40s. And his political nickname was, he was the boy orator of the Platte. The Platte River is extremely important in Nebraska. And Mark Twain said, yep, that's right. William Jennings Bryan is just like the Platte River, a mile wide and an inch deep at the mouth. If you understand Western rivers, that makes a little bit of sense to you. But William Jennings Bryan was the anti-imperialist. McKinley was the imperialist. The imperialists won. And the United States embarked on a mission of imperialism. And I've explained before, that the Spanish-American War really wasn't about Cuba or even Puerto Rico. It was about the Philippines. And that was our window to China. So the United States became an imperial nation. And because of the structure of the United States, there was no way that those imperialist colonies fit nicely into the structure that the founders had created. So they kind of did a make-up, a workaround as they went along, and found some language in Article 4, Section 3, that the Supreme Court could hang its hat on and say that the uniformity clause does not apply in those offshore territories, which is a wonderful thing for Guam, and I've explained that before. But to say, well, we don't get to vote for president, and the answer to that is no, because we're not a state. And District of Columbia doesn't, well, they did now because of the amendment, but they don't have representation in Congress because District of Columbia is not a state, and it shouldn't be a state. That's the seat of government. You certainly don't want the seat of government to be subjected to the comings and goings of state politics. That would be extremely disruptive. Puerto Rico, and I've explained before what the problem with Puerto Rico is. Again, it's the D word. If Puerto Rico were a state, there would be 4 more Democrats in the House of Representatives and 2 more Democrats in the Senate. And I've pointed out before that when new states are admitted, they're usually admitted in pairs. Hawaii and Alaska, one was Democrat, one was Republican. All through the whole statehood period, one state, free state, one slave state. So there's no way to balance out Puerto Rico. As far as Guam is concerned, the Constitution would allow Guam to be admitted as a state, but as a matter of reality, it's not going to happen. The smallest state is around 700,000, or let's say the average representation in Congress is about 700,000 people per representative in the House of Representatives. I don't think the other states would say, yeah, it's okay, Guam can have one, even though there are only 160,000 people there. Okay, I've got a caller on the line here who's probably going to make his mark.
Hey, Bob.
Good afternoon, Mark.
So I was listening to Pete when he called earlier, and the difference between the positions, I guess, would be that when Clinton got impeached, all the evidence was there. He lied to a grand jury, just as plain as the light of day. Should he have been removed for it? I didn't think so. I thought that he did something wrong, but it didn't warrant him being removed from office.
Quite a difference. And
yeah.
And in Clinton's case, lying under oath is a crime anywhere in the country. Whereas in
President Trump's case,
he was never accused of treason, bribery, or high crimes or misdemeanor. So in Trump's case, the House did a terrible job of putting together its case, didn't subpoena witnesses, didn't do what it should have done, and then said, and when the case went to the Senate, okay, now let's do it. So
yep.
So yeah, it's not an equal comparison at all, Mark. Good call.
Exactly. All right, have a good day, Bob.
Thanks for calling, Mark. You made your mark again. The halftime show that we have every day at 1700.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The impeachment trial ends. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The effort to remove the president from office came to its end late Wednesday afternoon.
With weeks of arguments, questions, and answers concluded, there was nothing left to do but vote. Senators standing at their desk voicing guilty or not guilty, one by one, with just one senator breaking party ranks.
Mr. Romney. Mr. Romney, guilty.
Utah Republican Mitt Romney, his party's nominee for president in 2012, says President Trump is guilty of an appalling abuse of public trust. Romney's guilty vote made for a 52-48 majority favoring acquittal. Romney joined Republicans in acquitting the president along party lines on obstruction of Congress.
Fox's Jared Halpern, Senator Romney telling Fox's Chris Wallace he was guided by faith in voting guilty on the abuse of power charge.
I understand there's going to be enormous consequence. And I don't have a choice in that regard.
The White House releasing a statement saying one failed Republican presidential candidate voted for the manufactured impeachment articles, which ended in full vindication and exoneration of the president. Democrats disagree.
But we made the fight for truth, and we made the fight for facts, and it created a bipartisan impeachment that can never be erased from history.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the president, will speak about the ordeal, which he has called a witch hunt and a hoax from the White House on Thursday. Iowa's Democratic Party says they've counted nearly all the votes from the caucuses 2 days ago and report a virtual tie for first place between Pete Buttigieg and Senator Bernie Sanders. China has announced that it will cut tariffs on $75 billion of U.S. imports by half starting next week, part of the Phase 1 trade deal. Dow futures are up nearly 200 points. America is listening to Fox News.
What does love mean to you? Is it passion, romance, or the feeling you get when making someone happy? Is it loyalty and commitment, or being completely vulnerable? Is love the feeling they sing about in songs or make movies about? Or is it just being with that one person who makes you feel safe? This Valentine's Day, celebrate the many ways to love with an exquisite 3-course dining experience perfectly crafted by Mezcla Bistro. From start to finish, you'll enjoy every bite and every moment with the person you love. Mezcla, a true taste of love.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Another patient in the United States has tested positive for the coronavirus. That's the 12th. Now, 4 of the Americans who arrived in the U.S. Wednesday aboard evacuation flights from China have been hospitalized with high fevers. They're now being tested for the virus. But acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf tells Fox's Tucker Carlson tonight.
The threat to the homeland remains relatively low, but we want to make sure, and that's why we've put these measures in place over the weekend, we want to make sure that that threat remains low.
China now reports 563 people dead, more than 2,800 people infected with the virus. The notorious con man behind the country's largest ever Ponzi scheme wants to be released from prison.
Prosecutors say he committed nearly $65 billion worth of fraud and cheated thousands of investors out of their retirement nest eggs. But now Bernie Madoff is seeking sympathy. The con man is seeking a so-called compassionate release from behind bars. A court filing claims the 81-year-old suffers from a terminal kidney failure and has fewer than 18 months to live. Madoff is currently serving a 150-year prison sentence. Tom Graham, Fox News.
Tributes pouring in for actor Kirk Douglas, who, according to his family, died Wednesday at the age of 103. He'd starred in dozens of films. Texas preparing to execute a man Thursday for killing his members of his own family. Alex Ochoa blames the drugs to which he was addicted for driving him to kill his wife, 2 daughters, father-in-law, and sister-in-law in August of 2002. He had just smoked crack and was craving more, but knew his wife wouldn't give him the money to score, so he grabbed a gun and started shooting. The Supreme Court has been asked to stop the lethal injection scheduled for Thursday because his attorney says he wasn't permitted to film a request for clemency from his death row jail cell. Lower courts have already rejected that claim. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is stirring up some of your favorite drinks all night long. Come down on Wednesday and Friday nights from 5:30 to 10 p.m. Indulge in some of your favorite local cuisine and pair it with your favorite drink. From our ice-cold beers, our finest selection of wines and liquors, to our top-notch cocktail specials, your friends at Mezcla Bistro Tumon are ready to serve you. Why limit happy to only an hour? The Mezcla family reminds everyone to drink responsibly. See you on Wednesday and Friday night.
Half a day, I'm Governor Lou Leon Guerrero.
And I'm Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio.
If you survived the Japanese occupation during World War II, filed a claim under the World War II Loyalty Recognition Act, and received a letter from the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission saying you are entitled to receive monetary compensation, then you may have an adjudicated claim.
Bring your claim letter and a valid government ID to our Guam War Claims Processing Center at the old Hakubotan building in Tamuning, Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and we will help you process your claim. If you have any questions or would like to know more, call us at 472-8931 or visit our website at warclaims.guam.gov.
Getting to this point wasn't easy, and our work isn't over. But we are now beginning to heal old wounds and honor our greatest generation. And we say to those still alive to hear it, your long wait is over.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So I'm looking through the Facebook comments here, starting in the second half of Tall Tales after that big halftime show that you all love so much. And I'm picking up on Jesse Limtiaco's comment concerning Mitch McConnell, who said D.C. and Puerto Rico will never become a state as long as he is Senate Majority Leader. He thinks it's part of a socialist agenda to make more territories a state. And I'm starting out with my own take on that. And I've explained that I don't think the District of Columbia should ever become a state. It was a mistake to amend the Constitution in 1961 to extend the presidential vote to the District of Columbia. As far as Puerto Rico is concerned, I've explained that the chances of Puerto Rico becoming a state are somewhere between slim and none, and it all comes down to the big D word. If Puerto Rico were a state, that would mean there'd be 4 more Democrats in the House of Representatives and 2 more Democrats in the Senate. And I don't think that you would ever get the requisite number of votes in the U.S. Congress to allow that to happen, especially the way things have been lately. If no matter how many times Nancy Pelosi made faces, I don't think the House would go along with it. As far as the socialist part, I don't see the connection there, but I'm not familiar with McConnell's statement either. I subscribe to a newsletter called the Puerto Rico Report. I read it. It comes out like once a week, and I follow Puerto Rico pretty closely for a pretty good handle on what's going on there, who's doing what to whom. And I have not run across Mitch McConnell's statement that he thinks that making Puerto Rico a state is part of the socialist agenda. So, Jesse, I'd really appreciate it if you could send me a link so I could read up on McConnell's statements and perhaps bring it back for further discussion tomorrow. Okay, let's see who else is commenting here. Rico Blancafor says, Happy Acquittal Day. And Desi Lemtiaco says, Michael St. Nicholas did that with the Democrat Party, and it's paid off tremendously. I think what he's referring to is being the one when there's a 14-1 vote. It can be a very favorable position. And my comment on Mitt Romney, I'm not ready to give Mitt Romney credit for being a man of conscience or principle or whatever. I am ready to recognize that perhaps politically he's more astute than he was when he ran for president, which is kind of damning him with faint praise, but that's another story. Jesse comes back and says, Jim Moylan seems to be doing the 14-1 deal as well, considering the supermajority in the Guam legislature. Well, if you're in the minority in the legislature, job one is to get the majority next time around. And you don't get the majority next time around by co-sponsoring Democrat bills or doing photo ops with them, Will Castro. That's not how you get the majority. So I think perhaps Jim understands that and would like to see a Republican majority next time around. Steve Hagan says Mitt Romney has a lot of Ukraine explaining to do. Boy, I'll tell you what, Ukraine went from an obscure republic in the Union of Socialist Republics, Soviet Socialist Republics, to a word that's on the tip of everyone's tongue nowadays. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was driving through Tuman, and I saw they were building a hotel down there, and they had this big Ukraine. No, it's not a Ukraine. It's a crane. Even I got confused. All right, so much for Facebook. Next, we go to the mayors versus Aetna. And this is a little bit of scratching your own itch. The Mayor's Council of Guam voted to ask the legislature to allow insurance providers other than Aetna in the Government of Guam health insurance contract after some discussion identifying concerns with the current carrier. Aetna International won fiscal 2020 Guam health insurance contract, albeit with ongoing challenges from Take Care. Take Care is challenging the law behind the contract selection process in federal court. Now, here we go. Agana Heights Mayor Paul McDonald initiated the motion for the vote during a Mayor's Council meeting on Wednesday. So Paul McDonald is the one that made the vote to do a resolution to ask the legislature to change the law about health care providers. And here's what he said. I know a lot of people that are experienced a lot of problems with Aetna, McDonald said. I'm telling you, the problems that I ran into with Aetna, I would not like anybody to get into that situation. The mayor said he's been waiting the past 2 months for an $8,000 reimbursement from the insurer. I'm struggling now to pay my power and my utilities because I've not gotten my reimbursement. So if you are insured by Aetna and you are not getting the kind of coverage that you want or the reimbursement or whatever, then if you're on the Mayor's Council, you make a motion to ask the legislature to change the law. If you're not on the Mayor's Council, what do, Real Joe Cruz?
You run away.
Yeah, forget it. So that's, if you couldn't do that, why would anyone want to have a Mayor's Council? Why would anyone want to be a mayor? That's a classic case of using your position to scratch your own itch. So there may be something to this, but the champion is someone who has his own axe to grind. And as in the case of Nancy, we hope that sometimes politicians can rise above axe grinding. Now, when I saw this, and when I saw the next item on the card here, I got curious about the Mayor's Council. To see what the Mayor's Council does and what the Mayor's Council's powers are. And I'm going to read the section of the law that deals with the Mayor's Council, but as far as their powers are concerned, one word, tadza. It's at 5 GCA 40105. There is established a Mayor's Council comprised of all mayors and vice mayors. The officers of the council shall consist of a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and sergeant at arms. Elections shall be held every 2 years, with the first election to be conducted on the first Tuesday in January following the general election. The council shall adopt its own rules and bylaws, provided that such rules and bylaws do not impede, restrict, or in any way limit the authority of each mayor within his district. That's where I'm interested in mayors. What do they do in their districts? Such rules and bylaws may be amended or revised from time to time upon a vote of 2/3 of the membership of the council. A quorum of the council shall consist of not less than 60% of the members, and no action of the council shall be effective unless it be adopted by a majority of the membership. Okay, so that's the Mayor's Council. That's the statutory description of the Mayor's Council. What does the Mayor's Council do? They can adopt their own, they can elect their own officers, they can adopt their own rules, but what else? To what end? What is the purpose of the Mayor's Council? Other than acting as a forum for mayors to scratch their own itch, apparently. Is this Jimmy or Jim?
Jim.
This is not Jimmy.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you told me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, Jim.
Robert.
Sir.
Yeah, my wife sometimes calls me Jimmy, but you know me better as Jim.
Exactly. There's quite a difference between Jim and Jimmy for Tall Tales purposes.
Oh, all right. I didn't know that.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, two things. One, we have a good mayor in Petey, Jesse Alec. Two, well, regardless of what you think of the mayors, I think they're right in saying that Edna leaves something to be desired. The cost of our prescriptions have gone up measurably compared to what they were in the select care. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
So that's all I wanted to say. Glad to hear your voice.
Okay, so you have 2 points. You have a good mayor in what village?
Petey.
And
Jesse Alec.
Jesse Alec. And you are not happy with Etna either. But
I am not.
Unlike the mayor of Agania Heights, you're not speaking ex cathedra.
Well, I'm speaking from my own experience.
Yeah.
I thought he was speaking from his own experience. Just because he's a mayor shouldn't disqualify him from being able to complain about a government program.
Well, it shouldn't disqualify from being able to complain, but that's not what the Mayor's Council is for, to address the individual grievances of its members.
Well, whatever.
Well, I'm glad you're happy with your mayor, Jim. Thanks for calling.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, not even close to being Jimmy. Yeah, a little more articulate than Jimmy and a little less verbose. And there's much less likelihood that Jim is going to want to take another ride on the Ferris wheel today. Okay, so that's my point. You know, my point is this. I read through this whole thing about the Mayor's Council. It has no function. It elects its officers. It adopts its rules. And apparently the mayor of Agania Heights thinks that it's to be a forum for his own personal grievances. So if he has a personal grievance, he brings it to the Mayor's Council, makes a motion, and then this rump council is to send a resolution to the legislature saying, do this or don't do that. I've never saw the wisdom in having a mayor's council in the first place. It even though it's not within its charter, it seems to present itself as the lower house of our legislature, but it doesn't seem to have any real function. And then, of course, they get involved with cockfighting and gambling and the carnival, and et cetera. If Jim has a good mayor in Petey, that's great. But a good mayor is the one that stays in his village and works hard for his village, not the one that is a good parliamentarian at the mayor's council and uses the mayor's council as a megaphone for his own personal gripes. So I once again put this under the column of a public officer using his public office to scratch his own itch. Okay, then we staying with the mayors. We go on to the next item on the calendar of the card. Tall Tales versus the Mayor's Council. And this one is titled Mayors Approve Salary Increase for Their Staffers. The Mayor's Council of Guam this afternoon unanimously approved an increase in pay for the mayor's support staff and maintenance workers. The adjustment will take effect on March 1. The pay increase varies, but could be as much as $1 an hour for some employees. Mayor's Council Executive Director Angel Saplan appealed for support, saying that some employees have gone without a pay raise for as long as 20 years. It's going to be around up to $1 increase per hour. The employees that have known about it are anxious to get it. Well, that's surprising. That's really surprising. I just want to express to them that for many, many years they have never gotten an upward adjustment on their salary. In support of the raises, Sinania Mayor Robert Hoffman also reminded those in attendance of all the things that staff workers do, like catching stray dogs. Well, I need to be reminded of that. I don't think they catch any stray dogs in Jigo. Helping with fiestas and funerals and responding to flooding and other emergency weather. And there's also an article in the Daily News covering the same item. So once again, now $1 an hour, here we go, Real Joe Cruz. Well, it's only $1 an hour. Why should I get excited about it? It's only $1 an hour. It's only $8 a day. Well, first of all, given the shenanigans that we've seen at the Mayor's Council, I'm not that easily put off that it'll be $1 an hour and no more for everyone. And second, I'd like to know what authority the Mayor's Council has to raise anybody's salaries, including Angel Sablan's, who's up at $98,000. So when I read this story, I fired off a sunshine law request. What I'm looking for is the notice for the meeting, the minutes for the meeting, and the authority that gives the Mayor's Council the ability to raise anybody's salary. So that should be coming in next Thursday, and I'll let you know how it comes out. But the whole thing just doesn't seem to it just doesn't read right with, as far as I'm concerned. If and of course the mayor's the workers, the mayor's workers are all unclassified, so they haven't gone through the merit system to get their jobs. Every time I see the words Mayor's Council, my curiosity increases. Okay, then next on the card we have Wayne Pacell versus Pito and Chelsea. And we're back to cockfighting again. And I'm going to go through this one more time just so I'm not understood. And my idea of what our federal system used to be like criminal laws should be made locally. The people in each state should decide what cruelty, the definition for cruelty to animals, whether or not they want to criminalize it, etc. That should be a matter of state law. And as I understand it, all 50 of the states have criminalized cockfighting. And also, as I understand it, in 2002, the Congress made the transportation and interstate commerce of fighting cocks a crime. So the Congress does have the ability to act on interstate commerce. Now, Guam is not a state, but I would, if it were up to me, I would tell the Congress, as far as the principle of subsidiarity is concerned, don't treat us any differently than you'd treat a state. Just because you can make law that's applicable inside the territory without any constitutional nexus other than Article 4, Section 3, doesn't mean that you should. So in that respect, I don't like the idea of Congress passing criminal laws for the territory of Guam. However, Congress did it. Did it a year ago. Said cockfighting is illegal in the territory of Guam. And after Congress passed that law, I said, but we're going to wait a year. We're not going to make this effective for a whole year. What did our local officials do during that year? Bluster. Bluster and pandering to the cockers on island, to the gods and arrows. It's part of our culture. We've been doing it since the Spanish times. And, you know, nobody should come along and tell us how to do things on our own island. And Amanda Shelton inserted language in the budget that said enforcing of this federal law is our lowest priority. A nonsense phrase, if there ever were one, but really good pandering, you know. So it will allow Amanda to go to every illegal cockfight that she wants to and be recognized. Hey, Amanda, you fought for us. Hooray for you. What number are you on the ballot? But it's really kind of a nonsense phrase to put into a budget. So it is against the law. And this guy, Wayne Pacelli from the Animal Wellness Association, apparently has a fair amount of money behind him, and he's made quite a splash. Come out here, he has come along and told us what the penalties are for violating this law, and they're extreme: $10,000 fines, time in prison, etc. And this outfit feels so strongly about it. They've taken an ad on the Super Bowl. They have offered a $2,500 reward for anyone that turns in an illegal cockfight when that tip results in a conviction. And they've kind of roasted Mayor Rudy Paco, who came along in an exercise of thuggery and said, I don't think anybody's going to go for that $2,500 reward, because if they did, they'd have to go down to court, and they'd be at risk. They'd be at risk. Yeah, nice talk for a village mayor. And, of course, Pito came along with not the same thing, but a similar kind of approach to the whole thing. And then Wayne developed the records by going through public records at Department of Agriculture and showed that over the last 3 years, there have been a huge importation of chickens. And he tied that to exporters in the mainland of fighting cocks, fighting roosters. And he presented cockfighting publications. I guess the cockfighters have their own magazines showing pictures of cockfighters on Guam and cockfighters in the States and their birds, producing extremely persuasive evidence that these people have been importing or have been shipping cocks through interstate commerce in violation of the law for 3 years. So, and Tom Poole kind of said the same thing. Tom's the territorial veterinarian. He said he's seen those magazines. So we have a situation then where there is clear proof that the law was violated for 3 years before with respect to shipment and interstate commerce of gamecocks. I'm tired of talking about chickens. Let's take the 7th inning stretch here, Real Joe Cruz.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
I've got a simple math test waiting for you, and I know that you, unlike so many others, are going to get an A. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, that math quiz may well determine how much you enjoy your job.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The University of Guam Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific. Join us on February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 to 9 p.m. and enjoy a night of live entertainment and cultural delicacies, all while exploring the many ways we celebrate love in the region. Tickets are $60 per person and include free-flowing drinks. Proceeds will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts programs. Visit give.uog.edu and click Shop to get your tickets today. Sponsored by the Guam Daily Post, Matson Navigation, and Choice Broadcasting.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Try their featured special for February. Southern Spice Crispy Fried Chicken. Louisiana-inspired fried half chicken served with red beans and rice. Available in Agana and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, center field bleachers, Chicago. So we're back in the chicken coop again.
Sir, if you're tired of talking chickens, let's talk turkey.
Good call, Real Joe Cruz. So I wonder if there is a law against shipping fighting turkeys in interstate commerce. But actually, when you stand back and look at what's going on and who's doing what, and most particularly who's saying what, there are plenty of turkeys involved here, aren't they? Yeah. So Wayne Pacell has made a compelling case that there has been a lot of illegality and a lot of people broke the law, and apparently the proofs are available. He's gone to Chelsea Munya-Brecht, who's the director of agriculture, and he said, you ought to not allow these birds into Guam. Now, apparently the way the law is set up, any importation of a live animal has to be cleared by the director of agriculture. So Chelsea Munya-Brecht is the person who signs the requisite papers to allow chickens to be brought in. I don't know exactly how they come in, if it's in the mail or by ship, or maybe they fly out, I don't know. But Chelsea has kind of demurred, saying, well, if everything you say is true, Wayne, so what? You're not entitled to any relief. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm going to continue doing what I've done. I asked legal counsel. I wonder who that was. Legal counsel said I'm doing it right. The governor agrees, so I'm not changing anything at all. So Wayne writes back, or then Pito Terlahi, of course, has to get involved. And Pito Terlahi took a shot at a lady named Marion Look. And Marion Look is a confederate of Wayne Pacell. She's a part of the Animal Wellness Association. And Pito took a hard shot at her, saying, you know, who are you to speak for the people of Guam? Your dad bought a lot of land from Chamorros and gave it all to the university, or I think it was Texas A&M. Yeah, gave it all to Texas A&M, kind of like saying, kind of like took advantage of Chamorro's is kind of the way Peto's letter phrased it. Your dad was not a good person. You're not a good person. Who are you to talk about cockfighting here? So a matter of standing. Peto said, Ms. Look, Marion Look, you don't have standing to raise this issue. But not long after I made Peto's remarks known, we had a caller. What was that caller's name?
Which one? Repeat?
No.
Mark? Jim?
Ken.
Ken.
The next of kin.
Oh, yeah. I remember his story about, Mr. Blas or?
The next of kin. F.B. Leon Guerrero.
F.B. Leon Guerrero.
Yeah. So the next of kin told us that a huge tract of land out there in Jonia, the Leo Palace land, was owned by F.B. Leon Guerrero. And he had a mortgage on the land. He was stricken with ill health. The Bank of America foreclosed on his mortgage. And Dwight Look bought that land at a mortgage foreclosure. That's what the next of kin told us. Well, does this make his daughter a bad person? Does it mean that we should not pay, that she has no standing to talk about what we do or don't do on the island? Only if you take a very narrow view of what goes on here, what I would call the Gwexit view, the separatist view. We don't need these people coming from off island to tell us what to do here. So then Wayne comes back and he says, Senator's views wrong and unpopular. Talking about Peto. Senator Jose Peto Terlahi took aim at me and Marion Look for supporting the federal ban on cockfighting. He's being very selective in singling us out. According to an unbiased poll, 62% of Guamanians favor the cockfighting ban. Only 20% oppose that federal policy, with the rest undecided. Let's remember that 351 U.S. representatives across our diverse nation favor the ban being applied throughout the United States, including the territories. Support in the U.S. Senate was unanimous. It was the 5th time in this century that Congress has voted to stop animal fighting. And let's remember, all 50 states ban it, even though cockfighters in several states falsely argued that Latinos, African Americans, Cajuns, and rural whites favored cockfighting. Many politicians in those states made the same erroneous assumptions that Senator Terlahi did. Pacelle goes on to say, I am an American, but not from Guam. I can, however, read survey results. The vast majority of Chamorro people favor the cockfighting ban, as do Filipinos on Guam. I'm afraid that Senator Terlahi, obviously a skilled politician, as evident from his electoral successes and his ability to hijack Talina Nelson's bill. I just put that in there, real Joe Cruz. That's not part of the story. Has a distorted view of this issue. His letter, while passionate, reminds us that even practiced politicians can represent views that are not only wrong, but unpopular and extreme. I am proud that people of Chamorro descent appear in our anti-cockfighting ads and do so without compensation or any other benefit. They do so aware that a few strident voices might condemn them. They are in the mainstream of Chamorro thinking. Now, Rudy Paco hasn't come out and told those people in the ads that they're at risk. So, once again, you know, there are principles involved, and I've stated the principle that I think is violated here, because local jurisdictions should make their own criminal laws. They should decide what's cruelty to animals. But we're beyond that. It is against the law. And much as I favor subsidiarity, I don't see anarchy as the way to get there. And what we have now is public officials basically advocating anarchy. Well, you know, like Rudy Paco, well, if it's outlawed, it'll just go underground. Kind of like, you guys that want to do it, just kind of keep it out of sight. And the amendment to the budget by Amanda Shelton, enforcing this law will be our lowest priority. Well, enforcing any law should be our highest priority. We shouldn't pick and choose as to what laws we want to enforce. If we don't like the law, we change it. And if a situation like this, we can't change it, then you got to weigh the risks. And I think that public officials here are encouraging people to take risks that may turn out very, very badly for them. So, so much for that. All right, next item on the card is Ken Leon Guerrero versus the King of Spain. Ken Leon Guerrero, Ray in the morning refers to Ken as the other Leon Guerrero. I don't know, that's kind of derogatory for Ken. I mean, the other governor, Leon Guerrero, kind of derogatory for Ken, isn't it? So Ken has an op-ed piece in the PDN, and the title is, Why Are Elected Officials Embracing Spain? I find it ironic those independence crowds who are so quick to refer to the United States as the colonizer or colonizing power are willing to bend over backward as they embrace and place on a pedestal the original colonizer, Spain, as Spain plans to celebrate the 500th anniversary of the Magellan Elcano expedition. The Leon Guerrero administration, members of the 35th legislature, the Committee on Decolonization, which is misnamed. It's really not the Committee on Commission on Decolonization. It's the Commission on Chamorro Independence. And the Independence Task Force members are all going down on bended knee in an effort to honor Magellan's voyage and the conquest and centuries subjugation of the Chamorro people. After centuries of Spanish presence in this region, our indigenous culture has been significantly influenced by Spanish colonialism. Through our shared history, Spain's imprint has had profound impacts which continue to this day. Leon Guerrero wrote, The King of Spain. Ironically, the picture illustration in the PDN news story of the governor's invitation to the King of Spain has Chamorro people running for their lives in front of a flaming shelter built of palm fronds taken during the 2018 enactment of Magellan's arrival at Humatak. The governor's language stands out in stark contrast to the legislature and Independence Task Force rhetoric that paints portrait of the United States as an oppressor that keeps the Chamorro people from reaching their full potential. As proof, I offer the discussions in sessions by senators of the 35th legislature on Resolution 255, who repeatedly cried out against what they felt was one of the most damaging blows inflicted by the United States on our people, the withholding of rights to vote for the president. Yeah, I got to come back here again. You know, once again, careful use of the language leads to understanding. Reckless use of the language doesn't. And those who know how to manipulate language can get results, surely by manipulating the language. And I'm going to spend a minute on this right here because it's really important. Going back to the failed impeachment of the Democrats. The House impeaches, which means the House indicts or the House brings about an accusation of the wrongdoing of the president. Well, you remember they started out, oh, Trump is terrible. He dealt with the president of Ukraine, and there was a quid pro quo. Well, and then they tried that for a while, and then they said there was definitely bribery there. Well, some of the people that covered this said the Democrats tried those in a focus group. Now, if you know who Frank Lunt is, Frank Lunt runs focus groups, and he's a master at coming up with language that has a particular effect on the listener. But the Democrats' focus groups decided that quid pro quo and bribery weren't correct. So then they went on and they didn't accuse Trump of treason, bribery, or other misdemeanors and high crimes and misdemeanors. They didn't accuse him of anything. So my point was that if it had been a criminal trial, if the rules of criminal procedure had applied, when the case came before the Senate, a motion to dismiss the indictment should have been granted because they never charged him with a crime. But I took that digression there to show you that the Democrats didn't like quid pro quo. They didn't like bribery. It wasn't the grounds that they were looking for. It was something that resonated with the people that they were looking for. So then I come back to this article here, Ken's article, and as proof, I offer the discussions in session by Senators the 35th on Resolution 255, who repeatedly cried out against what they felt was one of the most damaging blows inflicted by the United States on our people, the withholding of rights to vote for the president. Withholding of rights. Okay, this was a terrible thing. Someone in the United States withheld those rights. Now, who would that have been? Was it the president? No. Was it the Congress? No. Was it the Supreme Court? No. I know it was the Mayor's Council.
Yes, correct.
The omnipotent Mayor's Council, who is in its own sphere all-powerful. And the key word here is withholding. I don't know if Ken is copying the language they used on the floor, but nobody withheld the right to vote for president from anyone. And you see this all the time. You see advocates who say that a petition for certiorari was submitted to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. There's a difference between refusing and not granting permission. But this word withholding, nobody withheld that from anybody. Nobody in the United States government is depriving anyone on Guam from voting for president. It's the constitutional structure that I spent so much time on earlier, and I spent so much time on from time to time. If you live in a state, you will have representatives and senators, you will have electors who will vote for president. If you don't, you don't. It's unfortunate, but that's the way the country was designed. That's the way the Constitution was put together. And no one ever thought at the time of the framing that the United States would become an imperial nation. So here's another way of looking at it, a way I think makes a little bit more sense. After the United States got really deep into imperialism with its colony on the doorstep of Asia and its colonies in the Caribbean, primarily the Panama Canal. It was because of the Panama Canal that the United States bought the Virgin Islands from Denmark in 1917 during the First World War, because they didn't want to have Germans at the entrance to the Panama Canal. Puerto Rico, some of the same thing. Also, Puerto Rico had some commercial significance, but after the United States got fully into this imperialist mode, and after the Downs versus Bidwell was decided that the uniformity clause of the Constitution does not apply in the territories. I'll come back to this right after this as we head down the home stretch.
If you own a Toyota, please listen to this. It could help you avoid injury, maybe save your life. The Takata airbags installed in certain Toyotas can explode and shoot out sharp metal fragments at people inside the vehicle. You don't need to be in a collision. They could explode any time. In the U.S., these airbags have caused 26 deaths. There's been a worldwide recall of Takata airbags, and most have had the faulty parts replaced. But here in Guam, there are still over 3,000 Toyotas on the road with potentially lethal airbags, and yours could be one of them. So please, take your Toyota to Atkins Grow, even if you didn't buy it from us, and get the inflator replaced. It costs you nothing, it takes just about an hour, and it could save a life, yours or someone you love. The AK song says we're here for life. That's never been more true.
At Atkins Grow, we're here for life.
At the mall, as you enjoy your shopping, dining, or entertainment, you could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the renowned performance Chevrolet Camaro, the unapologetic rugged Toyota 4Runner, or the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines, plus prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. The more you shop, the more chance to win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So I've got another Joe on the line. Another Joe will pick you up in the home stretch. I want to talk just a little bit more about the presidential vote. And I left off with where the United States had embraced imperialism, wound up with some colonies, and the Supreme Court decided in Downs versus Bidwell that the uniformity clause of the Constitution did not apply to the outlying territories. And I could explain how the Supreme Court got there, but for brevity's sake, I won't do that. But the insular cases were not about, let's not have these brown people voting for president, which is what the nationalists, the separatists would have you believe. So here's the uniformity clause. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So that means the customs duties, the taxes, etc., have to be the same in every one of the states. That clause of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, first paragraph, does not apply in the territories, much to our benefit. It's a wonderful thing for us as an unincorporated territory. So you've come along until after World War II, and it could have, the thinking process that I prefer is this. Well, you know, we've got Guam, which we haven't done anything with. It was a coaling station for a while till we started burning oil, and then we didn't do anything with it. We didn't fortify it. We let the Japanese take it. Now we got it back. It's important to us now as a way station for the rest of our empire. So what can we do with Guam? It doesn't have enough people to be a state. In the 1950s, it's too far away to be a state. Remember, we didn't have island states or disconnected states like Alaska. So the thinking was, well, it's too far away to be a state. How about this? How about if we give Guam all of the benefits that we possibly can without it being a state? You know, like a Bill of Rights, the ability to, for self-government, for home government, all of those things that a state would have, but can't be a state, so it wouldn't have representation in Congress. In other words, Guam doesn't quite fit in there, but we'll make an exception for Guam and we'll treat it as well as we can. Doesn't that make a whole lot of sense, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but it takes all the bitterness out of the calculation. So it's probably not anywhere near as much fun for the separatists. Okay, I've got another Joe on the line. Now, this is not you, Real Joe Cruz.
It is not, sir.
This is another Joe. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Look, Bob, ordinarily I completely agree with you, except for that, unfortunately for me, I was indoctrinated at an early age by my elders that emphasized a Chamorro culture and a Chamorro identity, and simultaneously also an American identity out of gratitude and appreciation for being liberated. And proof of that will be, part of it anyway, is that most of my elders valued English being spoken, even though they and their children were penalized for speaking Chamorro in school and wherever they were caught. I don't know whether they were not supposed to be speaking it, I'm not sure. But they still valued English, and they recognized the opportunities. I've had relatives who went to college, got a higher education, master's degrees. Some went towards, I guess, doctorates, and some became educators. So there's a lot to be gained from the American dream. So the only issue is that as many of my elders were successful with education, there are those who were not as successful. Yet we were all seen as we belonged to the same place, the same group. We all value each other, and that was important. And what some of the younger generation came up upon was this concept of being the Americanization, meaning that at some point the younger generation were so Americanized that we lost valuing each other, lost looking out for each other in some ways that we ordinarily, traditionally would, especially because, as you say, we're on an island thousands of miles away from the mainland. So because of that, that all fits also being Christian. So it's kind of hard to not see something, see it as important as our elders would have seen it. So because of that, then I think I can kind of comprehend what the separatists are implying, but I can't say I agree with them 100%. I can understand it, but would I follow that lead? I don't know that I would. The only way I could say I would is if America, for some reason, became an atheist country, then it steered more towards socialism. So basically, it became communist. So if that were ever to occur, then I would see, well, no, I don't think it's as important as being Christian, and I don't know for sure that being Chamorro, having a Chamorro identity is synonymous with being Christian, but that's what my elders thought. And I see a lot of similarities in the language. You say like thank you, and which things incorporate God into the language. But it's not too different from, I guess, English. They used to say the year AD, the year of our Lord, so to speak. Anyway, Uncle Bob, I don't want to take too long, but thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I understand what another Joe was saying, and I'll tell you, if the United States ever went socialist and atheist, and we're trying really hard, aren't we? I'd have to think very seriously about staying here myself. Okay, another episode, exciting, elucidating, informative episode of Tall Tales comes to an end. We'll be back tomorrow. Adios, Estegopa.